The gallbladder, an organ that we probably don't reference a lot when we're talking about anatomy, and also one of the organs where the surgical prefix, the beginning of the word, that tells us location matches nothing like the organ itself. So when the patient has a gallbladder removal, that's actually called a cholesectomy. And it's not a gallbladderectomy. That'd be so much nicer if they would phrase it like that. But instead, they get to put those big fancy funky words in. So in this episode of the Paul Chandler Show with, hi everybody, and I'm your host, Paul Chandler, we'll be coding the cholesectomy. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back, y'all. So, like in this episode, we're going to be coding a cholesectomy. And I know that sounds like a funky word because remember the prefix and the suffix. Prefix tells us where are we doing it at. The suffix tells us what are we doing. So the cholesectomy, the prefix for it is actually for the gallbladder. So if a patient is having a cholesectomy, they're having the gallbladder removed. Now, there's three different ways or reasons, if you will, the techniques on how a provider can go in. They can remove the gallbladder laparoscopically by doing excision, or if they're doing a liver donation, as in, say like if I'm having part of my liver donated and hey, if my gallbladder needs to be taken out while we're there, kind of thing, during that procedure as well. So first we're going to look at how a gallbladder is removed laparoscopically. So as far as the coding, we have 47562 as the parent code. And I'll just put LAP for laparoscopically. So 47562. Now with that code, laparoscopically surgical cholesectomy. So that's all that we're doing. So the provider puts the scope in, and then they're using the camera to actually remove the gallbladder itself. So then that way, then the provider is not making any incisions at all to do the excision of the gallbladder. So with this, the 47562, the laparoscopically, it can be less evasive because they're just making little slots in. They'll generally use 3 or 4 different incisions depending on the situation. One will have the camera going in, and 1 or 2 will have the tools that are being used to being able to excise the gallbladder. But the first one we have is 47562, the surgical cholesectomy. But then with that being the parent code, then we also have the kid codes 47563. And that's a cholesectomy. It's still laparoscopic, but it's cholesectomy with coloangiography. And as I did just look down to make sure I pronounced that word right, because remember in medical coding, if you mispronounce a word or misspell a word, even by one little letter, that can completely change the meaning of the word. So we have just the removing the colon, and that's, the gallbladder, removing the gallbladder, and that's it, 47562. Or if they do the excision of the gallbladder to remove it out, still laparoscopically, but also do the coloangiography. So they're doing radiograph imaging of it first. Then that's the 47563. And then we have the 47564. So we're still in the laparoscopic column, but the 47564 cholesectomy. So we're still removing the gallbladder laparoscopically, but with also with exploration of the common duct. And remember in medical coding, we have the phrase, if that's not documented, it didn't happen. So if the provider just does the cholesectomy and that's it laparoscopically, 47562. But if they do that and also do the coloangiography, so they do the imaging of it, 47563. If they do the cholesectomy, removing the gallbladder, and go a little bit farther while they're there and go ahead and explore the common bile duct, then exploring the common duct, including in that 47564. So as far as laparoscopic, it all depends on if they just remove the gallbladder and that's it, or do those two other things. The coloangiography, 47563, or explore the common duct, 47564. So we have those three codes while we're doing the cholesectomy laparoscopically, but instead of poking the little holes in and putting the camera in to have the tools go in and remove the gallbladder laparoscopically, then the provider can also, instead of doing that technique, do the excision instead. So they're actually making an incision into the abdominal area and opening up the patient that way. So they're not doing a scope camera going in. They'll make the incision through the skin, and the insides, all the gizzards and whatnot are viewable. So on the excision technique side of it, first we have the 47600. So that's the cholesectomy. It's still the same as 47562, as in that's all that the doctor is doing. But if it's laparoscopically, again, 47562. But if it's the excision technique, where the doctor just makes the incision, takes out the gallbladder, closes it up when they're done, then that's the 47600. But we do have some kid codes with this as well. So we have 47600, just the gallbladder being removed, but we have 47605, excision cholesectomy, so removing the gallbladder with coloangiography. So if you notice something, and keeping the colors in black for the numbers, but notice how so far 47562 is the same as 47600, except the technique is different. How 47562 and 47600 both include just the cholesectomy, and that's it. We're removing the gallbladder, but 47562 laparoscopically, 47600 excisionally, if that's a word. If not, I just made it up. But then if they do the cholesectomy and also do the coloangiography, the imaging of it, how we had the laparoscopic version, 47563, but the excision version, 47605. Those are the same as well. As far as what are we doing, it's just the technique that's different on that part. And we have 47610 as the next code for excisions. Cholesectomy with exploration of common duct. And that should sound familiar because we have the cholesectomy, cutting out, removing the gallbladder, but also going a little bit further, exploring the common duct, excision-wise, 47610. But we just saw a few moments ago, laparoscopically, 47564. So what are we doing there is the same as well. It's just a different technique that we have. Now the excision codes though are a little bit different because we do have a couple more excision codes that we do not have on the laparoscopic side. We do have 47612. And I'm taking just a little peek at my CPT book because if Peter Piper picked a peck of peppers, all these big fancy words, so make sure I pronounce this one right. So the 47612, this is still underneath the parent code. So 47610 is the parent code, and then we have 47612, and we have one more code after this. So kind of block that off to show how they're all correlated to one another. So while the 47610 parent code was just the cholesectomy, the removing of the gallbladder, and exploring the common duct, if we do that, but go a little bit further and do the 47612 with cholesectomy. Cholesectomy. That's why when you're looking at certain medical words and trying to pronounce it, you want to be looking down and looking at the letters. So that's just going a little bit more. So we have the 47610, the removing of the gallbladder by excision and exploring the common duct. If we just do that, 47610, we go a little bit further and also do the cholesectomy, then the permanent opening, then that takes us to the 47612. Or we have the 47620, the last kit code in that group. So we're still doing the excision of the gallbladder, and we're still exploring the common duct, but we're also doing a transduodenal sphincterotomy or sphincteroplasty with or without choleoangiography. So with this one, we're either doing one thing or two things or three things. So we have to be doing either the transduodenal sphincterotomy, the temporary incision. So we have to be doing either the transduodenal sphincterotomy or the sphincteroplasty, either one of those two. And if we also do a choleoangiography, also do that imaging of the gallbladder as well, that's included in it. If we don't, same reimbursement, no extra steps there. So you can see before we look at that last code, dealing with if they're removing the gallbladder while donating part of the liver, that there's a major correlation between removing the gallbladder, the cholesectomy, if we're doing it laparoscopically or excisionally. The technique is different, but how much work are we doing is the same. We have those three correlations with the purple, green, and the red line. But then with the excision version of removing the gallbladder with the exploring common duct, we do have the two additional kit codes for doing extra work. And like I mentioned though, there is the one code that we have the possibility of if we are removing the gallbladder while a patient is having their liver donated. And I'll put over here during a liver donation. And that would be the code 47143. So that does take us out of the gallbladder area of the CPT book. It takes us to the liver area, because that 47143, that is one of the benchmarking codes for the liver transplanting process. And that's the 47143, the backbench work, preparing the cadaver donor to be transported, including cholesectomy if necessary. So this will only be done on a cadaver donor. So if the backbenching needs to also take out the gallbladder, then that would be an issue where it's bundled into the 47143. But of course, so that is not as common. So that is more rare. Using the 47143 code when we're coding the cholesectomies, because dealing with the liver donation. So we're really going to be in the laparoscopic and the excision sections there. So just a short little recap with the purple line. That is just removing the gallbladder and that's it, laparoscopically or via excision. And then we have with the green line showing the correlation, removing the gallbladder and also doing the choleoangiography, also doing that imaging. And with the red line, doing the cholesectomy, the removing of the gallbladder, and also exploring the common duct. Like we just mentioned before too, then if we're doing it excisionally, then we have two additional kit codes for doing more work. So you can see here that with the cholesectomy, and I'm going to try to stop saying that word because excision, removal of the gallbladder just sounds easier to say, that it's not very cumbersome, if you will, if you just kind of split it out like that and divide up the different techniques. But all in all, that is how you code a cholesectomy, the removal of the gallbladder. And from all of the cast and crew here of the Paul Chandler Show, we do thank you for watching and have an awesome rest of your day.